So let's sew this facing in now before we do the next part. You don't necessarily need to pin this, but I've decided to put a few pins in because I am going to sew this from the upper side of the romper, so not from this side, and so I don't want it to push or pull any. It probably wouldn't have, but you know, I want it to be safe rather than sorry, so I pin it in. And then I'm going to top stitch it from the other side, and I'm choosing 2 centimeters. That should just be enough and catch it nicely on the overlocked edge there. So over to your sewing machine, lock in your stitches, make sure that it's nice and flat, nice and straight, and then feed in your fabric. Now you will have to lift the presser foot and move it along a bit because you're going around this really sharp curve. So when you do this, make sure that the needle is inside so that you don't get stuck. So there you go. I'm just moving it over a bit, and you have got the markings on your needle plate, and that's what your eyes should be on the same level as your presser foot. Yeah, so don't look at your needle because that's going to then look horrible, and then it's almost better to not top stitch it and just let the little snaps do their thing because they will hold it down anyway. But yeah, top stitching looks so much nicer. I've used a lot of red because I think it's nice and it sets it off, and it's exactly that red that's also in the fabric. Beautiful. Now I'm going to steam it again. Make sure that nothing has stretched because that's what it wants to do. And now I'm ready to move this on and do the last little bit here for the romper, and that is to put the binding on. That looks really good, doesn't it? It's fine. So take your binding that we've prepared earlier, and it just simply gets slotted over the edge with the edge going right into the fold, and it needs to hang over 1 centimeter. You could have it hang over a little bit more if you didn't measure it out to make it a bit easier, but I think it's fine. So 1 centimeter over the edge. You could fold it in as well, but I don't think it gives you a good result. I did it on one of my trial rompers, and I thought, well, there's a reason why in industrial manufacture they don't do that, because it always looks horrible. So now I'm going to pin this all the way along. Important thing is do not stretch this binding. Yeah, very straight. And when we come to where the gusset is, and remember we put the gusset in like that little bit shorter, yeah, so it ends before the end of the curve. That's so that now when I put it on, it is easier, okay? So there isn't so much fabric in there, and it makes it nice and flat. So that's the reason why. As you go around the gusset, you will find that there'll be a little bit more fabric which needs to be steamed in later. So you want to do the tip, go down, and you can see that little extra. Don't stretch it. Yeah, just put it on right straight into that fold, and then we're just going to steam that in. It is not an issue. You can stretch it slightly while you're sewing it all in, and then we're going to steam it in again, you know, if you even have to do that, right? And here you can see it there, how much easier that is. If you have all this fabric in there plus the seam that goes in, that would be double thickness, 4 times thickness in that area, and that would not be nice. And also it would be in the way to put the snaps on, and the snaps might not hold in that area, and that is why we did that. So here we go. Now we've come around the only complicated part really of the binding. It's not even complicated, it's just you gotta know it. And then straight down, and I pin that in, and my binding I didn't cut to a certain length, so you can do that as well. You don't necessarily need to use my measurements there, just cut it straight. It's probably what I would do every time, but it's up to you. I've measured it all out for you, so you can just cut it the right length. There we go. So I'm going to run a quick check here, because at that time I hadn't worked out the length yet. I just put it on as is, straight, and I wanted to check that it all worked, and it did. So it's absolutely fine, and knowing that, then I can just sew it all in. It's perfect. And so you stay close to that edge and you sew it down. You could use your twin needle, you could use your cover stitch if you like. I am not a fan of rethreading anything. Threading my serger is the bane of my life. I really hate it, and I don't even own a twin needle. But yeah, if you wanted to use a twin needle, then I know some of you do because you've told me, then please do use a twin needle. So I'm just going over the curve here, and you can use the pin that you've taken out to help that along a bit, so that makes good sense. I always do that. It's something that I don't always describe, but I tend to use a lot of the pins that I take out when I'm going around, especially if I do sleeves and stuff, then to hold things in place, right? So they've got a purpose. Anyway, all the way down. Brilliant. Next line. I line that up with something that I see on my presser foot. So, you know, it's caught. But if it hadn't, I'll catch it now, right? That's why you want the second line. And also it looks nice. You can line up that line with either the previous stitching line or the edge. And if you're not a super tidy sewer, you might want to just go for the edge again. So I move my way around here. And already you can see that whatever extra I created in that curve is already like in the fabric. You don't even notice it anymore. So down we go. Brilliant. Now that that's done, I do the obvious. I will go and steam that all back in. I've overlocked the edge here. Don't do that. It's no need. I actually took the overlocking back out. As you can see here, because it didn't make sense, and I'm just sewing across from the underside, and again I use the pin to hold it in place here. That really helps so that it doesn't sit over the edge, all the way to the edge. Secure it and then cut it back really sharpish. Brilliant. There you go. Done. And now I've got a super romper. I'm ready for my snaps. I need to press this really well. I would put both sides on top of each other just to check that everything is okay, and then you can steam some more in if you need to, you know, make sure that they fit on top of each other. But really, once the snaps are in and it holds it all in place, it'll just hold it. So you can have a bit of wiggle room there. If you stretch something too much, it's really not a big deal. Just make sure that you're now pressing it into the romper. That side, I'm just going to go over here a bit and just like give this a good steam, just nice and flat. There we go, fold it up again. So this step actually took a little bit longer than I'm showing you here. Obvious reasons. It was my first little romper I did, and of course I had to film it straight away. And therefore this part I had to actually like, you know, fiddle a bit with at the top. I had noticed then I'd stretched it a bit and I needed to steam it in a little bit at the top part of my front facing. So there we go, and that's it. So once it looks like that, it's perfect and you're ready to put in your snaps. So I see you over there.